Okay, this is exactly where war in Syria gets complicated.
We're going to stick with international news now to check in on a story we are following today. To Syria now, where we're seeing reports alleging chemical weapons have been deployed in the country.
Okay, so I'm not going to get into whether it's all right for the United States to be there or not, because Russia's there, and if Russia's there, the United States, I'm not going to get into all that, but I'm going to talk about how RT reports on this kind of stuff. Okay, now I could show you multiple videos of Russia dropping these same phosphorus-based or whatever incendiary-based explosives on Syria. And you know, if they're killing Syrians in the name of the war on terror, then it's okay. Matter of fact, it's great. But if the United States is doing it, then it's just an evil war crime, right? I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous for both sides. And if I had my say, I would say both sides should be out of there. And as for what's going on between, I mean, I doubt the Alawites would last very long. I doubt the Ba'athists would last very long without support from Russia. So that problem, I think, would probably solve itself. Now, these are not chemical weapons, so this is a perfect example of how Russian television, Iranian television, press TV, and I imagine there's a excuse me, it's early. I imagine there's a Hezbollah TV network too that I don't know about in Lebanon. Matter of fact, I think there is. I used to live in Lebanon, so I hear a lot about what's going on there. So, you know, I mean, they love to just lie about everything, and while Russian television and Iranian television is the only place I can get the truth about a lot of things, I have to dig through a whole bunch of bullshit to get to it. And some of it is stuff like this. I mean, these are incendiary bombs. Are they a war crime? I don't know. Go to Geneva and find out. I guess that's where they argue these things. But they're incendiary bombs, just like incendiary bombs were dropped all over the place in World War II, and probably in Vietnam and every other conflict, because they instill terror in the local population, and when used right, and these, at least the Russian ones that I've seen, are definitely used right, because they're mixed with explosives. So what they'll do is, I mean, in World War II, what they would do is drop all these incendiary bombs and get fires started, and then drop regular bombs which would blow the fire all over the place. And, you know, I mean, the fires would be so intense that people would burn inside shelters. It's a horror. I mean, the whole thing. Who's allowed to these wars where they bomb cities? And the United States was renowned for this. There was a kind of a conservative guy, I forget what his name was, head of Allied bombing in World War II, responsible for the bombing of Dresden, which is the big example, right? A town, no military value, but the bombing of it made Hiroshima look like, you know, a firecracker going off. Well, that may not be true, but similar, at least the same, you know, as what one bomb did. I mean, they bombed the living shit out of Dresden. As a matter of fact, I'm sure I can show you some video. I'll try to add a video in. So, you know, I just want to point out that, you know, Russian TV, RT, will get on here and act all holier than thou. And I'm not saying what we're doing isn't wrong. Even I, with all of my experience and all of my research, don't quite understand the war on terror. I don't understand how like 80 million Sunni living in Turkey, Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, all these, probably more than 80 million, probably closer to 500 million when you look at them all, Pakistan, India, throughout Africa, how they're all terrorists. I understand sometimes, at least for some of them, their religion, you know, just like we have evangelical Christians, you know, those people do have a problem, right? Their religion, but how many of them really are terrorists? You know, 10, 20, 100, I don't know, certainly not 500 million, you know. And yet we've used the fact that they are Muslim, and in our case mostly we're after Sunni Muslims, to just randomly murder, you know, what, 1 million in Iraq, the Russians have killed, and the Alawites have killed probably 500,000 in Syria. In Afghanistan, I don't know how many we've killed. All over the place, we're just annihilating these Sunni Muslims, and I don't understand. Do we really have to kill millions of them in our pursuit of these terrorists? If they're even terrorists. I mean, I know that a lot of them are not terrorists. I know that al-Nusra and all these people who are fighting the Syrians, the Assad regime, and people in Iraq who are fighting the U.S. and stuff, they're not, you know, maybe sometimes they're terrorists against each other. When a Sunni group bombs a Shia mosque or bombs a market, an open air market, a bazaar or something, but you know, even then, you have to ask yourself, why? Why do they feel like they have to resort to terrorism? And even if that is terrorism, it's not terrorism against the United States. They're trying to terrorize each other in a war, in which, in wars, I've just pointed out, terror is commonplace. I mean, bombing of Dresden, firebombing of London, you know, how can we say that it's outlawed when there's never been a case of prosecution over these things? As far as I know, nobody was prosecuted over the firebombing of London, right? So where is terrorism in war really illegal? In fact, I think that it's promoted.